the Warriors draft picks not being able to play. You know, it's a little bit of slim pickings, but Cryer's a player coming off a really great season at Houston for the national runners-up. This is a player who led the team in scoring and shooting. He's a career 41% three-point shooter. He not just knocks down shots off the catch and shoot. He also can create and is a pretty good shooter off the dribble. He can get to the basket, not necessarily an above the rim player, but can finish through contact and also be a three-level scorer. So I like LJ Cryer. The issue is that he's 6'1". He's small. He's undersized for a combo guard. The Warriors love small players, though, so maybe we could see him getting some type of two-way deal and potentially being on the floor for the Golden State Warriors this season. But I do think he's an intriguing prospect who maybe fits the Warriors system because we do love high-level scorers, and he's great at shooting the basketball from beyond the arc.
Hit a deep one, but wasn't really looking to create his shot a whole ton, and that's rightfully so, considering it was his first game in the Summer League. We'll monitor how everything goes in the California Classic when Tui and Will Richard play. Obviously, we'll get into a deep dive on them. But Taron Armstrong, the one that stuck out to me, because the Warriors really do need some help at the point guard position. We talked last summer about how Reese Beekman could potentially carve out a role as a backup point guard, and instead it was no Beekman who got traded in the deal to get Schroeder, I believe. It was Pat Spencer who started getting run at point guard when Brandin Podziemski had the bad gas station sushi in the Rockets series. Kerr said last summer that Pods is more of a point guard than a shooting guard at heart because he knows how to get the team organized. He's a great passer, and he communicates really well. Do you see Podziemski as more of a backup point guard, starting point guard moving forward, or that combo guard, shooting guard that can bring the ball up the floor when needed, but better off the ball?
I think that Brandin Podziemski is a point guard, and I think he could be the point guard of the future for the Warriors with obviously Steph Curry, you know, coming to the sunset of his career, and we'll see how many more years he's got left in the tank. But Brandin Podziemski, it's simple, is a great playmaker. He is a player who has elite vision, good passing ability. He is a good shooter as well, but I don't think that's his biggest strength. He is a great rebounder for his size and for his position, which is just something that doesn't really have to do with him being a point guard or a shooting guard, but it's something that he brings to the floor. Then he also can be disruptive defensively. I think he still has some areas to improve defensively to become a more well-rounded defender, but certainly, especially as a point guard on the floor, I don't think he's a major defensive liability, which is a positive thing. But I just don't love Brandin Podziemski, Steph Curry. I guess the whole point is because the Warriors do like the fact that Pods can handle the basketball. But my issue is the way I know we're going to get into this, but my issue is that Brandin Podziemski did not shoot the ball well in the playoffs, and he's got to figure out how to show up in crunch time. That was like my biggest caveat with him this past season. He was great. After the Warriors traded Jimmy Butler, like his numbers skyrocketed. I think he was a huge catalyst for why the Dubs finished with such a strong record, 23-8, since trading for Jimmy Butler during that last stretch of the season, because Pod started knocking down shots. He had some really efficient games, especially when Steph Curry went down with injury. I think it was March, right? Like I remember mid-March, Pods had some big games where he did shoot the ball really well. I think he's a great playmaker with good decision-making. The assist to turnover ratio, about 3-1 is what he averaged on the season, which is exactly what you look for. So to me, those are all traits of a point guard. So I think that he's better as a point guard, but I get that the whole point of running him with Steph Curry is the fact that he can't handle the basketball and allow Steph Curry to do some different movement and screening off ball to hopefully give him more space and openings. So I guess that's the whole point. But I initially, when they brought in Pods, I wanted him to be a backup point guard behind Steph. Now, obviously, he's been inserted into the starting lineup. Steve Kerr loves him. So I don't dislike Pods with Steph in the starting lineup. I think that his skill set is one of a point guard.
Also, I got to mention this real quick. VJ Edgecombe had 28 points and 10 rebounds for the Sixers, the number 3 overall draft pick, plus 1,100 right now in Rookie of the Year per the FanDuel Sportsbook. So shout out to America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get that $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And Cooper Flagg, who's minus like 180 to win Rookie of the Year. Obviously, he's going to be the strong pick. But if you want a little bit of a sprinkle, VJ Edgecombe, man, 28 and 10. They're comparing him to Dwayne Wade. He was awesome at Baylor. If he can shoot the basketball consistently, he is going to be an elite player that the Sixers lucked into. So VJ Edgecombe, remember that name. Unfortunately, the Warriors, or I guess fortunately, the Warriors won't see him a lot these upcoming years being in the Eastern Conference. Brandin Podziemski, We're continuing the conversation. What is the hate? Where is all this hate coming from for a guy that had a pretty good season considering the amount of money that he makes and the expectations that he should have as a very young player? We'll continue this conversation coming up. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. It lets you track your insights, which I think is huge. We spend so much money on services or streaming or delivery, whatever it may be. And it basically just nuts and bolts for you. What are you spending? How are you spending it? How can you save a little more money? You ever looked at your spending and been surprised at how fast it can add up? That's where Monarch Money comes into play. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA. You will get half off your first year. I am very confused by all the Brandin Podziemski hate. And hop in the comments if you disagree with my take here. But I get defensively, he's not the quickest guard in the world. He doesn't have the measurables at just 6'4", which is not huge for the shooting guard position. And he doesn't have a long wingspan. It's just 6'5". So I get that. He's a hustle guy. His size limits him somewhat. He gets beat off the dribble quite a bit. However, he is crafty and smart enough to where there are moments where he got beat off the dribble last year and poked it away from behind or blocked it or, did something smart. He has really good positioning, especially in transition where, he took charges on the likes of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and some of the best players in the league during fast break situations where he just went hands up right in the perfect position and took the charge. So hustle, positioning, all these different things that help him. But we got to talk about more than just scrappiness when it comes to Brandin Podziemski, because the numbers show that aside from just being like a hustle player that's smart, he also has some serious talent.
I think, oh, sorry, were you done?
I was going to get into some of the numbers, but go.
I thought you were pausing.
Go. Dramatic pause.
It was a very dramatic pause. I just wanted to say that I think where some of the hate comes from is just the fact that he's treated differently than other young players. Brandin Podziemski is on this roster by head coach Steve Kerr. Like, I think that's maybe my biggest issue is the fact that Brandin Podziemski has been given a longer leash by a mile than other young players on this roster. Like, Brandin Podziemski, has been at times, though, has shot the ball terrible. I mean, he's had games that are off, as every player has. And I'm just saying, Steve Kerr will not yank him. Like, he will play 36 minutes despite having a horrible shooting night. And that's exactly what we saw in the playoffs, which are some of the stats that I was just getting ready to bring up because I'd pulled them before coming on the air. And he was absolutely brutal, and I think as a young player, something we both talked about off the air is maybe the moment is a little bit too big. Maybe that's a role that he has to grow into, is being able to be a scorer in a playoff and in a crunch time situation. You're playing against some really good and physical defenses, but at the end of the day, if Brandin Podziemski wants to start next to Steph Curry, I think the big reason why you like Brandin Podziemski in that role is because, number one, he has the versatile skill set where he can handle the rock. He has good vision. He has good distribution, but also he can shoot the basketball to where when Steph Curry draws multiple defenders and Brandin Podziemski's open, he has to be able to knock down shots. And he just didn't do that.
Let me step in because you can get to the playoff stats in just a minute, but I want to hit this thing chronologically for a second.
Okay.
First of all, I do think it's kind of funny that people call Brandin Podziemski Steve Kerr's stepson in the comments. They're like, God, Steve, you're playing your stepson so much. That's kind of comical. I get that. But at the same time, there's a few things to unravel about this. First of all, fearlessness was something that I thought Podziemski had as a part of his game. And the playoffs proved, to your point, that he, like many young players, was, I don't think timid's the right word because he was shooting it a ton, but he was affected by the moment or the couple of injuries that he had later in the season. But what I will say about him is overall, 11 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists on 45% shooting and 37% shooting. That's pretty good for a second-year player. Post All-Star break, he shot at 43% from deep. That is very good. He was 60 of 137, so that's some volume. Don't forget, he was 14 of his first 65 from deep on the season. That's 21%. So the fact that you're able to hit 14 of your first 65 for 21% in the season at 37%, that means he's a pretty good shooter consistently. The pre-All-Star break splits, he wasn't great. 10, 5, and 3, and the numbers suffered because of it. If you remember, there were injuries involved there as well. The nose, the human ragdoll, he just kept taking shots. His minutes were down a little bit, but 10, 5, and 3 wasn't great. Post All-Star break, he was averaging 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. In April, he was incredible. In 8 games before the playoffs, he averaged 17 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, shot at 50% from the floor, 48% from 3, and 83% from the line. Now, that's just an 8-game sample size. But name me one other player in the NBA making $3 million per season. Mind you, Moses Moody makes 13. And this matters. $3 million that accumulated that stat line, 17, 6, and 4 over 8 games. So why isn't the narrative a young, improving player that had a great second half of the season that is so cheap that if he pops just a little, he could be an X factor if he were to consistently replicate a few months of last season? Now, I get it. Playoffs are brutal. That's what you're getting into. But the hope is that it was his first playoffs. He's young. He could put that behind him and really play consistently like he did in March and April last season, because he was good and he's cheap. And again, the reason why Pods to me gets somewhat of a free pass is because he's $3 million and he played a lot better than a $3 million per year player. And you say, well, what about Kuminga? He gets so much hate from Warriors fans. Jonathan Kuminga turned down $30 million last year, it was reported. He thinks he's worth more than $30 million. Pods is making less than $4 million. That matters. Finances matter in the game of basketball. How much you're making is how you're perceived.
I do think that you make a great point in terms of what you're getting for the amount of money spent, which is extremely important to this Warriors front office because of where they're at in the luxury tax. Brandin Podziemski is a player who's going to get you the most bang for your buck. 1,000% don't disagree with you. If we start to go down the path of money, though, then I think you have to look at other contracts that are on the books for this Warriors organization. Like, are you getting your money's worth by paying Draymond Green $26 million a year to be essentially a one-way player, because he doesn't bring much to the table offensively, elite defensively, and sometimes can run that point forward position where he is handling the basketball, but averaged 9 points per game this last season, 9, 6, and 5.5 assists at 6 rebounds per game being. He's, like you said, he's been a player who's been up there in defensive player of the year conversations, and a player who brings a ton defensively is what you expect to get out of him, but doesn't bring anything offensively. Like, is that worth $26 million a year? Now, going back to Draymond Green being signed by the contract, I think it was very important to the organization to bring him back because of the history that was there, and because Steph Curry wanted Draymond Green to get what he thought he deserved. And if Steph Curry wants it, it's going to happen. So I think you can kind of go down a far way down that road in terms of evaluating each contract that all the Warriors are on and who is really playing up to. And I think that when you look at Brandin Podziemski, there's no question that you are getting the most bang for your buck. I'm sorry, someone is ringing our doorbell right now.
During a live show. Yeah, that's fun. Hopefully you can't hear the dogs going crazy in the microphone. But Pods, to me, Kylan, and people make a great point saying he was playing way too many minutes at 36 per game towards the end of the season, which is accurate, right? 100% accurate. Shouldn't have been playing that amount. But he plays a position where he has to come up and handle the ball that the Warriors really didn't have anyone else. We saw it come postseason when he was out. Like, Pat Spencer was your best option to do said. And that's why I bring up the name Taron Armstrong as someone that he's not going to score a lot of points. He's not going to try to create for himself. He's more of a create for others type of guy, play good defense, has some good size. That's why I think Armstrong can be a nice little acquisition this upcoming season. But to me, the Warriors, if you have an issue with Pods playing too much, to me, it's not a Pods thing. It's more of a front office thing of they have not surrounded Steph Curry with better ball handlers and playmakers to where there's reasoning to give Pods a lot less minutes.
One thing I will say is that I think Pods did do a good job in the moments when Steph Curry got hurt or wasn't on the floor. However, I just keep going back to the playoffs, and he's a player that you hope can develop and grow into that role. But I think going back to my thing about why he gets hate, I don't think that Brandin Podziemski deserves hate at all. But I think it's the usage. And like I said, I just think the way that he's been treated compared to other young players. Like, I'm looking at some of these numbers, and I do remember there were games where I'm just like kind of pulling my hair, like, why is Brandin Podziemski still in the game? I feel like we had those conversations during the playoffs because, like, I'm looking at a stat line
and
against.
I was like, just throw in Spencer. Like, the game that he was sick, he was so bad. He was throwing up bricks that weren't touching the rim, and I was like, you got to get him out of the game. Throw in Spencer. And in that particular game, Spencer actually came in and gave him a spark. And then you see that the next game when it's Spencer's turn to shine, and they go like 15, 20 minutes of Pat Spencer, you see he's just not good enough to play in a playoff game. He doesn't have that type of talent. So that's on the front office to me. That's a roster construction issue that they were in this position to play Pods as much as they had to, especially when he was struggling during the playoffs. No, you're going to leave me alone. The dogs are fine. You sit down. You sit down.
All right, I just don't want people to have to listen to our dogs the whole show. What I was going to say is, but like, for example, in that game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, Brandin Podziemski goes 1 of 10, 5 points, 8 rebounds, only 2 assists. So you want to bring up like, oh, he does all the other things he did of 2 assists and 1 steal, because that's, I think, the case that you can make for Brandin Podziemski staying on the floor is the fact that he is an energy guy. And I love that about Brandin Podziemski. That he's always going to go 110%, even when he's eating bad gas station sushi. Like, he's not a player who you see hanging his head ever. He always picks himself back up after a bad play, after a missed shot, and he's going to keep going, and he is going to hustle for every single rebound, every single loose ball. So I think you got to respect that. And then I think the versatile skill set is another reason why you keep him on the floor. But still, when he's terrible and he's 1 of 10 and he's not really passing the basketball and he's not really rebounding the basketball and he's playing 39 minutes in that game, 1 of 10 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, game 3. Like, to me, that's a hard situation to make a case for him staying in the game that long.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I think there definitely have been times where, like, he is clearly given an extremely long leash.
I agree, but if you throw in the lineup of, let's say it's Jimmy, it's Draymond, it's Buddy Hield, it's Steph, and it's Kuminga, I don't think you have the ball handling abilities against some tight defenses in that situation, and that's the position that they were in. That's why Pods is getting so much PT.
Okay, well, then I think you could make, for this upcoming season, then you make the argument how the Warriors need another backup point guard.
Absolutely.
I mean, to me, Brandin Podziemski, when he was drafted, I'm like, okay, great. Like, this is a young kid who we can kind of carve into that role, and that's not the role that this organization has, put him in, at least based on last season. Hold on.
I got to jump in here because it says Steph and Dre can handle the ball. Sure, they can. How many times? Dre can handle
the ball. I agree. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, but he turns it over 5 times a game, I feel like.
Yeah, he's definitely had a little bit of a turnover issue.
I don't want Dre handling the ball is the issue. Like, he can, but he's had a significant turnover increase over the years. Tell me I'm wrong based on the numbers, but just watching his game alone, like, it's gone up. Has it not significantly?
No, it's not.
It hasn't? He's been doing this for his whole career?
Yes. Well, no, so I was going to say it's been his turnover, Draymond Green's turnovers per game has been high 2020 through now, right? He averages about 3 turnovers per game. And so
usually bad
the assist to turnover ratio is close to 2-1 because in past seasons, this past season, he averaged 5.5 assists per game, but when he averaged 6 to 7 assists per game to 3 turnovers, like 2-1 ratio is still the ratio in terms of assists per turnover, but that's not exactly where you want to be. Again, 3-1 is what you're looking for. So definitely still a little bit loose with the basketball. But
a lot of it's careless turnovers.
But he's not a true point guard. He's not a player who's going to be running the point, I think, in the second unit. To me, that's the issue because Brandin Podziemski's starting and he can stay in the game or he can roll over into that unit in certain moments. But like, who's the clear number 2 in terms of point guard specific role?
Yeah, and I guess that's what we're going to talk about coming up with the free agents that are available. Or, Taron Armstrong, he's someone to keep an eye on. He's young. He's Australian. He showed the ability to, 6 assists to 0 turnovers in yesterday's California Classic. Weak competition or not, that is pretty impressive stuff. So we will see if he is a means to an issue that the Warriors have had for a long time, and that is turning the basketball over. And as Curry and Draymond have gotten older, in my opinion, it's gotten a little worse, but at the same time, it probably is the exact same of what it was. The difference is when you're winning 73 games in a season, you're not really looking at the turnover issues. You're just looking at the W's in the win-loss column. Locked on Warriors continues with a look at free agency and a name that I would like the Warriors to go after that as of right now is linked to the Los Angeles Lakers. That's coming up. All right, so I found this pretty fascinating. It is official. The Golden State Warriors are the only team that have not made a move during free agency. And we knew with the lack of flexibility that this team had that free agency was going to kind of be on the back burner. The draft was most likely going to be somewhat on the back burner. The way to make this team better is through trades. A lot of them, the big one tied to Jonathan Kuminga. And then from there are some little moves that you can make around the edges, bringing in some smaller players. And I think based off everything we heard from Steve Kerr and Dunleavy in the post-season press conference was that this team had great chemistry. The locker room was awesome. They came to work every single day and played hard. And Lacob and company believe that if Steph Curry was not hurt, they could have made a serious run for this thing. So 9-10 guys we expect to have back from a season ago, and it's about how you're going to fill out the roster. Al Horford has been a name that we thought was all but confirmed, but at this point, it's still dragging on. Could it be retirement? Could the Denver Nuggets be getting involved? Or will we hear one of these days that it's official, Al Horford is a Golden State Warrior? But in terms of the players that the Dubs can go after, I like the name DeAnthony Melton. I think he's going to be super cheap. I think he's pretty high upside if he can stay healthy, because the reason that he's going to be so cheap is because he's coming off 2 very injured seasons. But it does sound like that the Los Angeles Lakers there's a growing expectation that the Lakers are going to sign DeAnthony Melton, which would hurt to me. So some more players that are potentially available. Damian Lillard, who wouldn't affect the Warriors this upcoming season, but would be a hell of a story. The Oakland native coming back to the Bay Area, a place that he said he didn't really want much to do with. Restricted free agents like Josh Giddey, and there's Malik Beasley, who actually would be a great pickup, but he's got some issues right now, to say the least. Cam Thomas is restricted. Quentin Grimes is restricted. We mentioned the name Al Horford. That one seems to be the most likely as of right now. Russell Westbrook, could he be your chaotic backup point guard? Chris Paul, I don't think they go down that path again. Amir Coffey. I like Amir Coffey. That's a name that would be interesting, as would Precious Achiuwa, formerly of the Knicks, that averaged 6 points, 5 rebounds, and could protect the rim a little bit. Chris Boucher, former Warrior. There have been some links. Gary Payton II. Last we heard were reports that the Warriors were likely to move on from GP2, but until that's official, we can consider that one. Malcolm Brogdon, a point guard, if healthy. I really like a veteran in Malcolm Brogdon. Ben Simmons, no thank you. A campaign. We got Banton. We got Trey Lyles, Thomas Bryant of Indiana, Garrison Matthews, Monte Morris, Kyle Lowry. The list goes on. And basically the case study here is that the Warriors can't do a ton of improving aside from fringe players in this year's free agency. However, you get the right fringe player, and as we saw with Nemanja Bjelica and Otto Porter and even GP2 that summer, when you surround number 30 with the right players, you always have a chance. Although the older you get, Curry's entering year 39 of life, it gets a little harder to do said. And you also don't have Klay Thompson, who was still pretty good, and Jordan Poole, who was good, and Wiggins, and now Kevon Looney, who had a great postseason. So it's getting harder. Let's put it that way.
The player that interests me based on that list is Al Horford. I think that's the only one that jumps off the page in terms of who would fit what the Warriors are looking for and would add something to this team. And he's a player we talked a ton about in recent episodes, because there have been a ton of reports out that the Warriors are very, very seriously and aggressively pursuing Al Horford. But you're talking about a big who can stretch the floor with the way he can shoot from beyond the arc, but he is a little bit undersized, but an elite defender. And the Warriors definitely could use, and they've talked about needing an elite perimeter defender, but also interior defender as well. So I think that those are great assets to add to this Warriors team. My issue is that going to be what puts this team over the edge to being a championship contender? And that's where I think they really have to explore the trade market. I don't think that there is enough out there in free agency, as you ran through that list, like outside of Al Horford. Like, who do you feel like the Warriors aggressively have to go after? You can bring up Dame Lillard. I've seen a lot of people who are excited about that potential, but he's not playing this upcoming season.
Jenny Dell here on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome to CBS Sports HQ. We are one day away from the fireworks of the 4th of July, but the fireworks, they've been going on non-stop when it comes to the NBA free agency. It's been crazy. There's still so much more work that needs to be done. Checking out the top available free agents right now. Now, restricted free agent Jonathan Kuminga. He tops our list at CBSSports.com. You can check out that whole list online. If you take a look at number 3, you see Malik Beasley. Well, he is currently the subject of a federal gambling probe, so any deals with him currently are on pause. And restricted free agent Cam Thomas rounds out our top 6. Lucky enough to be joined by Ashley Nicole Moss now on the desk. We're going to talk about some of the best landing spots for these remaining free agents. You're busy away on that laptop. It has been nonstop for you, girl. I don't know how you're still standing right now, but let's start at number 1 with Kuminga. Where do you see him fitting in best?
Yeah, so Kuminga is going to be interesting, right? I think that more than likely he's sticking with the Golden State Warriors for a multitude of reasons. I think the biggest reason for me is that obviously the Warriors have a qualifying offer to Kuminga, making him a restricted free agent. They could still re-sign him. We all know how that works. But here's the thing. Kuminga wants to be in a situation where he's going to have a bigger role. That's been the contention between him and this organization, Steve Kerr specifically, is that he's never really found his footing. And as somebody who is a Knicks fan, I know once upon a time we had the same issue with Obi Toppin, and Obi wasn't really able to flourish into his own as a player until he got where? The Indiana Pacers. So it's going to really rely on Kuminga's desire for a larger role, consistent minutes, and a lucrative contract. Now, the Warriors, on the other hand, though, they need to weigh their potential asking price and fit within their current roster. So they have to weigh what Kuminga's going to want against what they're able to provide. And as we know, these aprons have drastically changed the way these teams are doing business. But it seems now on July 3rd, this could change, obviously, that what Kuminga is looking for, there's not a lot of teams who can pay him that. The Warriors are the only team that has the dibs on him right now. It's just a matter if they can come to an agreement with what his role is going to be. I will say this, the Golden State Warriors should start preparing for life after Draymond Green and Steph Curry. And Jonathan Kuminga may be the piece that they can start doing that with. They just have to find a middle ground between what he wants and what they can provide.
Still so young, too. He will be just 23 years old at the start of next season. Next up on our list, I want to ask about Josh Giddey, traded from the Thunder to the Bulls in June of 2024 for Alex Caruso. He had career highs in many categories last season.
Yeah. Golden State spent much of the 2024-25 season searching for stability. Roster shifts, aging veterans, and playoff uncertainty created a sense of constant recalibration. In the middle of all this, Brandin Podziemski showed up not as a future prospect, but as a player with immediate value. While much of the spotlight stayed on Stephen Curry's workload and Draymond Green's volatility, Podziemski quietly built trust. Podziemski began the season on the edge of the rotation. By late December, he was getting regular minutes. By March, his minutes were meaningful. Kerr used him in close fourth quarters, trusted him defensively against bigger guards, and let him initiate when Curry sat. Podziemski stayed remarkably consistent. He averaged 9.2 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 3.7 assists across 63 games. Additionally, he shot 45.4% from the field and 38.5% from 3. More importantly, he kept his turnover rate under control despite playing in a motion-heavy offense. Among all guards under 6.5, he ranked in the top 5 in defensive rebound percentage, which proved how quickly he read shot trajectories and rotated into position. For a team that struggled with second chance points, his contributions filled a genuine gap. Coming to Steve Kerr, he's rarely been effusive about rookies. Usually he asks for patience. In Podziemski's case, he applauded the rookie's habits by mid-season. In media discussions, he called him a connector, someone who understands the flow of offense and finds the right option rather than pushing in the wrong one. Podziemski's decision-making stood out in tape review sessions. He never gambled on defense, but moved his feet, fought through screens, and communicated well. Offensively, he rarely broke rhythm. Even when he went scoreless, Kerr kept him on the floor because he maintained spacing and avoided empty possessions. The trust was also cultural. Kerr said Podziemski walked in ready, and veterans backed that up. Reports from the locker room say that Curry appreciated Podziemski's attention. Analysts often compare Podziemski to Dante DiVincenzo or even a young Alex Caruso. The surface similarities are obvious: secondary ball handling, catch-and-shoot reliability, perimeter defense, and rebounding hustle. However, the comparisons flatten what Podziemski actually does. His touch around the rim is more polished, and his footwork on closeouts is calmer. He doesn't overhelp and never chases highlight plays. That restraint gives him value in lineups that already carry offensive risk. While DiVincenzo sometimes drifted into cold stretches, Podziemski stayed steady. The Warriors' front office didn't expect this readiness in just a year. He wasn't drafted for immediate contribution. However, by April, he was one of the most efficient bench players on the roster. On some nights, he was more reliable than Moses Moody or Gary Payton II. This offseason, Golden State has chosen to adjust. Klay Thompson is gone, Chris Paul never settled into the offense, and the team has publicly committed to balancing competitiveness with development. Notably, Podziemski fits that balance. He barely needs a high usage rate to influence games. Also, his floor spacing and defensive IQ make him portable across rotations. Whether he plays next to Curry, handles the second unit, or operates as a swing defender in zone coverage, he rarely looks out of sync. That versatility gives Kerr flexibility. In a playoff setting, that kind of player buys minutes when starters rest. In an 82-game season, he helps prevent fatigue from accumulating on veterans. The Warriors have acknowledged that the window for their title core is closing. What they haven't done is compromise the system to extend it, and Podziemski thrives in that environment. Analysts say Podziemski will enter his second year with more responsibility. Kerr needs another perimeter defender who can space the floor, and the front office is still exploring options in free agency. If you want more grounded takes on Warriors, subscribe here. We'll be tracking every off-season adjustment and player development storyline and updates that actually move the needle.